Welcome back. According to latest reports by Economics Intelligence Unit, EIU, the global production of maize has been stagnant in recent years despite sustained improvement in agronomic practices and developments in seed technology. However, EIU projects that global production will increase by 7.7% year-on-year in 2021 and 2022 to 1,205.4 million tons and decline by 2% year-on-year to 1,181.7 in 2022 and 2023. EIU analyst financial derivatives company joins me to discuss how this report impacts African economies. Hi, Ifeanyi, good to have you.
Hello, good afternoon.
Now, what is the impact of this development on maize import-dependent countries like Nigeria, and how can they edge against this?
Okay, so in 2021, we saw that local production of maize in Nigeria increased by 16% year-on-year to 11.6 million tons. And we've also seen that, however, despite that fact, we still have low demand compared to the supply that we have to meet our local demand. Now, for import-dependent countries like Nigeria, we would see that we will have to import at higher prices or import lower volumes. This is based on the EIU reports that you just read out. Now, taking all of that into consideration, what we could have typically done is boost domestic production so that we would have enough capacity to meet our local demand. Now, let's not forget the unique factors that plague Nigeria, such as insecurity, transportation problems, lack of infrastructure, lack of proper storage facilities, to mention but a few. Now, some of these things have impeded Nigeria to be able to meet our local demand. What we already, it's too late. We couldn't predict issues such as the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, it's already happened and it's had a ripple effect across global economies. So what we can now do is leverage on the products that we have comparative advantage over, whilst we look to our trading partners to mitigate that shortfall. Now, what we can do in the future is enter into forward contracts today so that in the future we can have our prices locked in at good prices so that we'll be able to meet our demand gap.
Now, maize is a vital raw material. It has very diverse uses. It's used in the production of ethanol and animal feed. The global demand for industrial ethanol has spiked from 13.12 billion gallons to 26.1 billion gallons in the past decade, and that's an increase of 121%. Now, it will be interesting to know in what ways this surge in demand for ethanol, the impact it can have on the dynamics in the maize markets in Nigeria.
So like you said, maize is a good source of ethanol. So ethanol is gotten from maize through the fermentation process. Not just maize, but we have products like cassava, potatoes, and I think sugarcane as well. So these are products that from which you can get ethanol. So in Nigeria now, what we see is industries and companies partnering with state governments and the federal government through the NNPC to set up production plants, so ethanol production plants in certain states such as Adamawa, Jigawa states, Kebbi states, and I think Kaduna state. So they're focusing on sugarcane-based and cassava-based ethanol production. We haven't really seen too much activity as it concerns maize-based ethanol production. And some experts have said that we would want to first focus on using maize to meet other more important demands, and I use more important in air quotes. So experts say that Nigeria, we have we use 60% of our maize to make animal feed. We use 25% in the food industry, and then the remaining proportion is consumed by households. So people have said, we use cassava and sugarcane-based ethanol. Let's focus on that to meet our local demand, whilst we preserve our maize to meet other demand that, traditional demand that we have. Now, what we will now see is if ethanol production increases, we will be able to meet local demand and then export the excess for foreign exchange.
So in 2021, let's just see what the government is doing. The federal government approved, the cultivation of a genetically modified maize variant called Maize. And this is expected to be drought tolerant and disease resistant. How will the commercialization of Maize revolutionize the agricultural sector in Nigeria? And are there ethical concerns around the consumption of genetically modified products?
Yeah. So it's very interesting, the whole genetic engineering as it pertains to food production. So it's a welcome innovation. And like you rightly said, the federal government announced the cultivation of Maize. And a few weeks ago, we also heard that it's been announced that they would start trials in certain farms in different parts of Nigeria. So the trials basically would last for 2 planting seasons, one in 2022 and the second one in 2023. And the idea is to see how plants perform in comparison with, your regular maize seedlings. And if there's a boost in production, then we can now distribute to other farmers. So we'll see how the test trials run first before we commercialize. Now, it's a welcome innovation, like I said. So it would boost crop yield, which would help us produce more. We'll meet our local demand, exports in exchange for foreign exchange. There's lower risk of, disease-infested crops because we will need pesticides as well. They'll be able to withstand harsh weather conditions because, like we know, maize traditionally grows during the rainy season. So if it's drought resistant, then we will need to irrigate the land during non-rainy season. So that's a welcome development. Now, to your questions about ethical concerns, bear in mind that if something is genetically modified, then the genes or the DNA of the product, be it a plant or an animal, is altered. So the concerns by stakeholders are mostly health-based, because if you ask your average Nigerian, or they'll basically say we don't want anything that is not natural in our bodies. So that laying that foundation, some of their concerns include introduction of carcinogenic substances into the body, and carcinogenic substances cause cancer, like we know. And there's also allergic reactions, which we may not be aware of, bearing in mind that genetically modified foods are a relatively new concept.
Interesting concept. If I would look forward to see how this Maize, disrupts, the maize industry or the maize production in Nigeria. If I OTC analyst, financial derivatives company, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts with us in the program.